You cannot be unaware of the chaos going on in our world. You just can't. You can't miss it unless you're not paying attention. And people do that. But brothers and sisters, on the streets of Ferguson, Missouri, for the past several weeks, there has been chaos. And frankly, I'm not concerned what side of the political spectrum you might fall and whose side that you're on. In fact, the very fact that anybody at all is picking any side at any time before we know everything seems to be begging the question, but that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, there's chaos on the streets of Ferguson, Missouri. And there's chaos on the streets of Ferguson, Missouri because of the reality of the situation on the ground. And there's marches, and there's protests, and there's rioting, and there's looting, and the very community that has suffered under this is destroying itself. But it's not just happening in Ferguson, Missouri. It's also happening in the Ukraine. It's happening in Syria and in Iraq, where our brothers and sisters are being slaughtered, and ethnic cleansing is going on to drive every Christian and everyone that doesn't agree with a certain particular theological view of Islam is being driven from that part of Syria and Iraq. Chaos, bitterness, hatred, enmity, revenge. All of this is building over and over again all over the world. And yet, precious friends, do you understand that these huge pictures that we see are only a macrocosm of the war that goes on in our own hearts and in our own families and in our own lives every day? Oh, sure, you may not be beheading your cousin for cutting you off or treating you badly. And yet the same spirit that produces that kind of ugliness in Ferguson is also beginning to take root in our own hearts when we hold grudges and when we remember slights and when we refuse to forgive. The famous civil rights saying in the marches all over the country for decades has been, "No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. If we're not going to get any justice, you're not going to have any peace." That's the cry. Well, brothers and sisters, I want you to know this morning that is completely antithetical to the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's not no justice, no peace. In fact, I'm going to make a bold statement here that I challenge you to think about. You don't have to agree with me. Goodness gracious life, if everybody agreed with me, how boring would the world be? I mean, I'd like it, don't get me wrong. Justice cannot produce peace. Justice can never produce peace. A friend of mine that I was talking to earlier and giving him a little foretaste of what the homily was going to be about, he said, "Yeah, my military unit had a saying, said, peace through strength." Guess what? Strength doesn't produce peace either. And do you know why that's the case? Because everybody's idea of justice is different. That's the reason why I always get tickled when people say, "Well, I just want to be treated fair." No, you don't. No, you don't want to be treated fair. The truth is you don't want to be treated fair. You don't. You want to be treated special. Of course you do. So do I. You don't want to be treated fair. "Oh, I just want what I deserve." Really? Honey, spend some time thinking about that. What if you get it? What if you get what you deserve? Now, come on, it's just us, so we can be honest. Do you really want what you deserve? Do you see, dear ones, the whole concept of fairness and rights and demanding my rights, and bless God, we better make sure that all the slices of cake are exactly alike because that's not fair. Do you see the kind of spirit that creates inside humans? It creates a spirit of entitlement, a spirit of expectation, and a spirit of bitterness, and a spirit that turns those outside of you into your enemies and persons that you must extract your rights from. There is always going to be poverty in a society where that is held up as the highest good. The cry, no justice, no peace, is absolutely wrong. Because justice cannot produce peace. What it can produce is a changing of the guard. Those who are oppressed become the oppressors. We see it over and over and over again. The second those that have been taken advantage of get the power, guess what they do? They take advantage of the people that took advantage of them. So what's the answer? How do we break the back of this spiritual hell that we create with ourselves? And make no mistake about it, precious friends. This spirit isn't true just in politics. It's true in our everyday relationships. The constant hell of the eternal prison of keeping score in my own life. Well, that person didn't send me a thank you note. Or that other person didn't properly thank me for what I did for them. Or they didn't recognize what I did for them. Goodness gracious, if I could just fix that in marriages, I would cut the divorce rate in half immediately. If I could get husbands and wives to quit keeping score with one another, well, I did that for her. Why doesn't she do this for me? If I could heal that in my own heart, I would liberate myself from 90% of all my problems in every relationship I have. So what's the answer? The answer is, precious friends, is that we must have a spiritual conversion, a constant spiritual conversion that fights against the spirit of scorekeeping in our relationships. If we can overcome the power of scorekeeping, that self-centered and narcissistic prison, that focuses only on my own needs and on my own desires, we will be free. The gospel lesson gives us the path this morning. You know the story well. You just heard it read to you. The king wants to settle accounts with his servants, and he brings the greatest debtor before him. One of his servants owes him what in modern times would be many millions of dollars. A debt he could not pay. In his lifetime, in his children's lifetime, he could not pay this debt. And so the king, as is his right, notice this, are you paying attention here, folks? The king exercises his rights. And he says, okay, sell the man into slavery, sell his wife into slavery, sell his children into slavery, take all of his possessions, sell all of his possessions, and then we'll apply that toward the debt. What does the guy do? He does what I would do. He falls on his knees and begs the king, Master, please, please be patient with me. I promise I'll pay you. I'll do anything I can. Please, please be patient with me. I'll pay you. And the king has pity on him, and he doesn't set up a payment plan. You know what he does? This is what's so amazing about this story, folks. The king doesn't say, okay, fine, let's set up a payment plan so you can pay me back. No. The king says, man, don't worry about it. I forgive you the debt. Don't let it hang on your head anymore. I forgive you. The guy leaves that glorious moment of freedom and finds a guy who owes him $20, one of his fellow servants. And the scripture says he grabs him by the throat. And he says, you pay me what you owe me. And his fellow servant, uses the exact same words that just fell from this other servant's mouth before the king. Be patient with me, I'll pay you when I can. And the fellow says, no way. And he throws him in jail until he paid everything. Well, his other servants saw that, and they were a little upset. And so they went and told the king. And the king brought him before him again and said, you wicked servant, shouldn't you have shown the same mercy to your brother that I have shown you? Because you have done this, I am going to do what I said I wasn't going to do. I'm going to sell you. I'm going to sell your wife. I'm going to sell your children. I'm going to sell all your possessions and apply it to your debt. In fact, I'm going to leave you in jail until you pay everything. And then Jesus adds a chilling phrase. So will your heavenly Father do to you if you do not forgive your brother. Watch this. It's not just if you do not forgive your brother. If you do not forgive your brother from your heart. Brothers and sisters, the path to authentic peace is not through justice. The path to authentic peace is not through strength. The path to authentic peace is not by being right or being rich or being powerful or being smart or being white or being black or being tall or being short or being male or being female or being Greek or not being Greek. The path to peace is through none of those paths. The path to peace has three elements. The first element is you've got to acknowledge you're a debtor. There is no way you're ever going to have peace in your life until you acknowledge that you are a debtor to the mercy of God. That God has shown you mercy in your life. God has shown you kindness. God has shown you help. God has shown you love. God has created you out of love, and you recognize that you are a debtor to God's mercy. He's your king. And you recognize, you must acknowledge that you are a debtor. There is no one who is ever going to have peace in their life if they don't acknowledge they're a debtor. The only way the first debtor, that wicked servant, could have amassed such a great amount of debt would be by not paying attention to what he was doing. You couldn't amass that amount of debt without disregarding the way you lived your life. That's why he got into that deep trouble. That's why he got into that deep hole. And the sickness that grew in this young man's heart was the fact that he didn't recognize how great a debtor he was. And so when it came time for him to show mercy to someone else, he was unable. You will never, ever have peace in your life until you acknowledge your debt to God's mercy in your life. Ever, 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 ever. It'll never happen until you have the guts, until you have the courage to acknowledge your debtorship to the mercy of God. You will not have peace in your life. The second step to true peace is after you acknowledge your debt to God's mercy, you admit you need forgiveness. There is never, ever, ever a more powerful phrase in the human language that is more difficult to say from our hearts than, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We hate it. Let me change that. I'm not going to speak for you, for heaven's sake. You don't have this problem. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Especially when my wife catches me doing something I shouldn't do. I hate telling her I'm sorry. I hate it. Isn't that amazing? Or worse yet, when I do something and I have to look at my two children and those little precious eyes and say, Daddy, sorry, baby. Daddy did wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. I have to do that in traffic most of the time. But you're not going to have peace until you have the courage to admit you're a debtor. Acknowledge, admit, and then the final step is to extend that mercy to others. St. Cosmas the Aetolian, who died in 1779, and I'm going to paraphrase his statement because I love it so much, but I haven't completely memorized it yet. He said, before he died in 1779, St. Cosmas declared that there is only two loves that you need in your life. There are only two loves that you need in your life. The first is your love for God, and the second is your love for your neighbor. And he went on to say that these two loves are like the wings of a bird. The bird needs two wings to fly. And so your life will only be peaceful. Your life will only be contented when you are actively seeking to foster and build those two loves, not building your career, not extending your wealth, not trying to acquire that new thing that you think is going to make you or your family happy, not packing your bank account, not buying that new pair of pants or new shirt, not getting that great job or marrying that pretty girl. All of these lesser things that we think are going to make our lives peaceful never will. The only two things that you need to focus on in your life for the rest of your life are the two loves that you need: your love for God and your love for your neighbor. Jesus says it best today: unless you forgive from your heart, you will not be forgiven. So let's change that famous civil rights protest march from no justice, no peace, to something that will really make a difference. Are you ready? In fact, I'm thinking about getting t-shirts made. I really am. Instead of saying no justice, no peace, which never happens, let's tell the truth. No mercy, no peace. Today, in your life, if you don't show mercy to people around you, you will not be at peace. If you don't forgive, you will not be at peace. If you don't love, you will not be at peace. Today, you are invited to both.